Sheriff, the
Yeah.
YouTube is all set.
Okay, is everyone present that wishes to be?
There is no one currently in the waiting room.
Okay, very good. Good morning, everyone. I hope all are well, healthy. Thank you for your time, and our apologies for the delay in our start. We've had a little technical trouble here in the Sheriff's Office. This is our second stakeholder meeting for our development of our plan to reform and reinvent policing in the Warren County Sheriff's Office. Just a quick status update. Since our last meeting, we've had a significant amount of community feedback, number of phone calls, emails, responses, had several meetings, met with local organizations, Lower Adirondack Visionary Associates, Marcy Flores, Public Defender, Probation, Criminal Justice Task Force. And to date, we've declined no invitation for a meeting. And for us, it's really been quite a learning process. We've raised our own awareness through these interactions, and I think we're really off to a great start. I will say that we're at the end of January already, and the governor's deadline is April 1st. I'm going to ask all of you, please do not be concerned by that April 1st deadline. The plan that we develop is just going to be an outline for our future. It's going to be a living document that will change. We'll continue to do our work well beyond April 1st. Just a brief review of what we've done and what the process required to start, and the reason that it took us so long to meet in the first instance. We did a comprehensive review of our own operations, policies, procedures, the way we conduct business, to ensure that what the governor and the people, more importantly, expect from us, we are doing. And through that, we learned a lot. We came up and identified training needs and requirements for revisions in our policies and procedures. We had our first stakeholders meeting, and for those that participated and followed through with watching the video, if you couldn't join, it was very productive. We had a lot of good feedback, great conversation. I think the thing that I know the undersheriff will share the same thoughts. The thing that the public wants most from us is to be treated with dignity and respect. I think if anything comes out of this governor's direction or directive and our plan, it's that procedural justice will prevail, and that all will be treated fairly. At the end of our last stakeholders meeting, we gave each of you a homework task to go out on your own and connect with people in the community and to seek feedback from them. We all have our own circles that we travel in, people that we trust, people that reach out to us. So at this point, we'd like to open it up. This is, again, very informal. I'm really not a fan of Zoom meetings. I love when we can connect and interact and jump in. But please, at any point, just jump in. If you have feedback you'd like to share, questions, concerns, comment, please jump right in. Todd Monahan's grinning. I know he always has something to say.
Well, I think the big thing is I would capitalize on what you just said. Is everyone feeling respected? On the treatment side of things, we see a lot of people not being able to get to treatment. And that's my big thing recently, is being able to bridge that gap. And I know that looking into maybe a jail program, or bridging it from when they get arrested to getting to treatment. I know that they're looking at some opiate diversion programs. I know there's drug courts, there's probation, all those things, which are all going to be very helpful. But I think the biggest time is when they've been arrested, in between that time. And obviously now that they're not in jail and they're out on their own, that's the more difficult process, is trying to get to them. I don't know if there's a perfect answer for that one, but really just trying to bridge that gap and giving them some information as soon as possible. Maybe on the night of the arrest, giving them some options, a phone number, anyone to kind of call and bridge that gap for them to get into treatment right away, because it only helps probation by the time they get there, or helps the court system if they know that they're already in a program. and being treated. And I know that most of the people, when they get arrested on alcohol and drugs, is not the real person that we're seeing. You know, it's a person under the influence. And we've all probably had friends and family members who have gotten under the influence and not acted the way that we know that they are. So, I mean, that's my big thing. And I know that I'm talking to lots of people on trying to get that to happen. And I know on my side, as far as Confer Park's concerned, we can certainly help out in any way. One of the big things that we're really focusing on now is trying to get treatment the same day they call. So if they call for an evaluation, we're trying to get it in that day or within a 3-day window, instead of, you know, a backlog of maybe a week or 2 weeks. And I know we're looking at multiple different avenues. I know Suboxone is a real touchy subject for a lot of people. We're trying to do ourselves a service and making sure that it's used appropriately. We're doing a lot more follow-up and shorter scripts, and that's one of my big initiatives that I want to do here at Confer Park. Rather than giving them a 3-week script or a 2-week script, more or less doing the shorter term scripts and helping them bridge that. Now, I also want to try to have a plan for when they leave to maybe get off from it if they can. But the realistic, what we're finding here in this end is that some people are going to be on it for a long period of time. And we can try to talk them out of that. We can try to talk them into a different way of life. But there are just some people that are just dead set on that, and there's not much you can do with it. So that's my feedback.
Todd, I got to say, I totally agree with you on the, and I don't know if it's the arrest that maybe awakens something inside of somebody, but I can't tell you how many phone calls I've taken as the Stop DWI coordinator that says, I need to get help, I need to move forward, I want to get this process rolling. You know, maybe it's just an awakening because of the arrest, and they had an epiphany the next day. But they all have sounded genuine that they wanted help and they wanted assistance in getting through this process and the programs. And you know, and it wasn't something because it was court ordered. It was something they wanted to do to help themselves.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things we hear is, I was so down and out, I almost wanted to get in trouble on purpose. Mm-hmm. So they did something to get in trouble so they could get the help. That when they were in their addiction, they just couldn't pick up that phone or couldn't get to the thing. And Bob, I'm sure you've seen it, and Rob, you know, so by the time they get to us, it's almost like some of them wanted to get in trouble for the help.
You touched on a point early on, Todd, and it's something that we have identified and started conversations with several members of this group. We're going to create and work with organizations to create a resource card that we can provide to our patrol officers and investigators. We are often the first point of contact when people are in crisis. And there are a tremendous amount of services available in our region, but oftentimes we just can't think of them, don't have a phone number. We're going to create a card that the officers can carry in their shirt pocket and provide to these people, leave it with them so they have the phone numbers and the contact information for these services.
Awesome.
Yes, Mr. York.
So in addition to the resource cards, one of the things that we have discussed as something we could possibly explore is implementing something that Essex County is currently doing. They call it the Law Enforcement Mental Health Referral System, LEMERS. And it's for both mental health and addiction services or individuals struggling with those types of issues. When any law enforcement agency in Essex County comes in contact with one of these individuals, they submit, and it's a one-page, it's not even a full page, it's just a brief, very brief online referral that goes off as a secure email to the local mental health administration. And then that allows for an outreach to occur. And it's HIPAA compliant, it's secure, and there's no feedback that goes back to law enforcement other than the referral was received. So that's something we could look at doing here. We've had some discussions, and I'm part of the Glens Falls Police Department's reform committee, and that's one of the things they're looking at as well. So we could easily try to implement that in Warren County.
Was that an event, Mr. York? Was that in every arrest event that they referred, or was it specific? Does it have a specific parameter?
I mean, it's the officer's discretion.
Officer discretion, okay.
Yep.
Liza, you had your hand up?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to share that the sheriff and I also discussed an idea that's happening in Rensselaer County, or happened prior to the pandemic in Rensselaer County, just networking events between law enforcement and local community-based organizations. And I would like to help coordinate that with Rob York and others post-pandemic. And we could make that an annual thing or a regular thing where we're building and maintaining the relationships between law enforcement and community-based organizations, so they know the face with the number and the resources and services that the community-based organizations provide.
I would prefer not to wait. You know, Zoom is not the most favorable, but things like this with you, Liza, Mr. York, we would like to start looking at, you know, these programs now. We don't know how long this pandemic will have a hold on us, and there are people in need today. I've heard of that law enforcement mental health referral system. Is that something that you would be the administrator of and coordinate for our region, and we would just be allowed access to do referrals, Mr. York?
Yes.
Okay, we are on board. So if you would like to connect with us later on after this meeting or another day in the near future, we would definitely be agreeable to participate in that program.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Yusi.
Good morning, Sheriff and everybody. Thank you. You know, I, like Rob, have also been involved with the Reform Committee here in with Glens Falls. And, you know, over since we started this process, I think one of the things, and, you know, I'll start by saying I like the fact that you talk about this being a living document and we just don't end on April 1st. And as I think about things, you know, community engagement and community involvement, you know, I think are key aspects of what we're doing for all the citizens, you know, whether you're white, brown, person of color, you know, whatever your religion is. And just to get to know the community and what's out there, I mean, that takes time. And, you know, no one should be afraid of the police, probation, or anybody. They should, you know, we should all have a healthy respect for people, but that takes time. So, you know, I'm happy that we're talking about this being a living document and continuing, you know, going forward. And we have also met with the Sheriff's Department, and we can talk later when we get into restorative practices and, you know, and how we want to deal with the community and certain things as we go forward. But, you know, my main takeaway is the community and how they perceive law enforcement, including what we do in the engagement process. And it's a long process of, you know, something we probably all neglected through the years. So I'm happy that we're going to continue the process forward after we get through with this. And, you know, I think a lot of good comes out of it.
Thank you. Ms. Flores?
Thank you. Good morning. I just wanted to ask if all the members would be willing to send to you or to the undersheriff a list of resources of agencies and community resources, so that when you make your resource card, at least you have all the information from us. I wouldn't expect you to send it to all of us and say, what am I missing? If we send everything to you, you can coordinate it.
We would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, and that would probably be the most updated information as well.
Yes. Anybody else? Ms. Gooden, how are you this morning? Good. I think you still may be on mute. Okay,
Here we
there you
go.
are.
Am I there? Good morning, everybody. I did have a couple of talk to some people, and their main concern is still not having any minorities on the department. And actually, they're very surprised, like I was, that there was not any. And I explained to them the process, but that still didn't seem to, you know, help, whatever. But, you know, I told them it's a process. You know, first of all, you gotta pass the exam, and you have to score really high on the exam to be well, how you look at things, right? So that seemed to be really huge. That was really that came from everyone that I had talked to. That was number one. So they were wondering, how are we going to get more minorities in as a part of our department?
We have two thoughts with our plan. We've identified that as a need here as well. And the first would be for us to go out and aggressively present, go to the colleges, go to organizations in the community, go to groups, meet with you, take referrals for people that have an interest, share the examination dates on social media, on our website. We're finding that we really don't have a lot of interest overall from the community for our examinations. We don't get a lot of people that sign up. So the need is there throughout the community. So that would be an area that I would hope that perhaps, you and I could continue to connect. When we have an exam announcement that comes from civil service, we could talk about it and you could help us in sharing that.
Yeah, because that seemed to be the big thing, is that they didn't know when the exam would be. And actually, how do you know when the exam is coming up? Is it in the paper or?
There's a posting that comes out of civil service. Most people will see it on the webpage. It's required to be posted for a certain period of time, but it's easily missed.
So it's on your webpage?
It's on the Warren County Civil Service Personnel Department page.
Okay.
That's something that the tests come up for each position once every year, maybe 2 years.
Okay.
So it really is incumbent upon us to get that information out and actively recruit and entice people to come forward and take these exams. The second component would be more for someone like yourself and your organization. There are study guides that come along from the state and other resources that are available. You touched on the most important component of that. Beyond signing up and participating in the exam, they're competitive. And if we have people that take them and they don't score high enough to be reached through the process, we can't hire them. So I think you'd give them the greatest opportunity if we shared in resources for all that, help them prepare for these tests. Yes, Ms. Flores.
Are you also going to potentially discuss with civil service having a local preference for hiring? Or is that something that
we
could
just
maybe
changed our status recently, and that we opened it up to contiguous counties. It was in the past that it was just Warren County that was testing. That would afford us a greater pool of candidates that would be eligible to take the examinations. And I know we had a conversation about it. I don't know if we have a preferred list for county residents first.
There is no preferred list at the moment. We have a meeting scheduled with Mrs. Nenninger from Civil Service concerning statuses, civil service status. The State Sheriff's Association has just had a meeting. They've talked to state civil service about the restrictions that civil service puts on these on testing and hiring practices. And I know, and not speaking for Trish, but she was super excited to see that list come out, or that those talking points come out to the state and the state civil service. So, but we do have a tentative scheduled meeting to talk about some civil service intricacies that maybe we can work with.
Thank you. Yes, Todd.
Just want to piggyback on that a little bit. And one of the conversations I've had with people previously on these tests are, I don't think I would do good on them because I wasn't a good test taker at school. I encourage everyone to take it. It's a different kind of a test than you would think that you would take at school. So I just encourage them to do it. I know for a lot of people, the study guide helps, and just getting it over for the first time of taking it. You might have to take it a couple of times. It's not like you take it the first time and ace it. So I just encourage people to take it and to get that experience anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take the test, take any test. It doesn't, even if you don't think you're going to, any test you qualify for, well, the more experience on those tests, the better off you are. Okay.
Any additional feedback? I see Mr. Biddle joined us. I know you always have something to say. Good morning.
Well, good morning. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm really glad you're looking at the civil service test. You are, and I'm, your hands are tied oftentimes on this, where you have to take the top 3, and it doesn't take into consideration other life experiences and so on. So I'm excited. Sheriff LaFar, maybe you and Sheriff Murphy could connect on that. I know Sheriff Murphy has had some talks about presenting with our Assembly and Senate members some new legislation to help turn that and open it up to let you make more decisions and parallel with what we're talking about here in this group. I think it would be exciting to have that happen.
I agree. Always great perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think
sir.
one of the newest things the state civil services is kind of come across is a continuous recruitment. It can't be done in certain instances, say for a police officer exam or a communication officer exam, but continuous recruitment does fall under the state corrections category. They have a continuous recruitment website. And maybe someday we can get into that also for our corrections division. So there is other, and Ms. Good and I would be happy to sit with you anytime. We'll talk about recruitment and where to find those tests. It's hard, it's difficult. I understand that pain. I really do. They're hard to find, but we can get into that.
Yeah, I remember when I took the test, it was difficult, but I passed, but I'm just saying. That would be helpful though. If we could really just see what that test looked like, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
The practicing and just really, honestly, just finding that there is a test out there that's coming up. I think so many people.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
That's huge. That's
right.
80% of that problem right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start getting into the meat and potatoes and share some of our findings and where we've come over the past several weeks. This meeting, I know in Zoom sometimes there are time parameters, but we are not bound by any restrictions. If you have to go, but we'll talk and remain with you as long as you'd like to communicate about these topics. The first one we'll touch on are restorative practices. When we met the first time, I was referring to this as restorative justice, and Liza clarified that for me, and she seems to be really a resident expert and resource for us. We've talked with Ms. Flores, Mr. Yusi, Amy Secor in probation, and it seems as though, I don't want to speak for them, but we're really going to have some good traction, and they've caused us to really think outside the box. There are already practices that are somewhat in place that deal with youth in our communities, but we're going to look at opportunities for working with adults. And Liza even suggested, and I think it's a great practice to start, dealing with using restorative practices for our employees. If there's a discourtesy with an officer and a member of the community, that can often be resolved. You can reduce harm and really resolve the situation through a conversation. So those are things that we're going to look at. We will not be at the forefront of this. We're going to collaborate, but this will be something that will be really spearheaded by, I don't know if it'll be Liza, but an entity outside our sheriff's office. Liza, would you like to share a little more?
Sure, thank you, Sheriff. We met with Mediation Matters, and I don't know if you're going to get into that as well, Sheriff, but we definitely feel like there's an opportunity to use restorative practices in many different areas in the justice system, but we want to start small. And like Sheriff just said, one of the ways we can do that is in just using restorative practices with how we resolve complaints. But yes, it's already working in the probation office, and Amy's seen success with that. And there's many different ways we can implement it throughout the justice system. And we're going to be learning from other police departments throughout the country as well that have been successful with implementing restorative practices. But I'm happy to be working with the Sheriff's Department and Mediation Matters to make sure that officers can be trained in restorative practices. It is definitely something that requires learning through the experience of it. It's a little bit harder to learn through Zoom. You really want to be in person, but we will do everything we can ahead of time to make sure that people are starting to get familiar with the philosophy and the practices.
Yes, Mr. Biddle.
I'm really excited about this. Having had issues within my family, I really want to make sure that the victims' rights are always respected first and foremost here, and that you never really appreciate, unless you've been a victim, what a victim's gone through. Liza, you and I have spoken about this in the past, even before any of this, just in our fireside chats together at Gourmet Cafe. But what I mean is, it's really tough respecting the rights of privacy throughout this, and making sure that those are upheld for the victim, and not allowing certain things to happen. Maybe you could get into challenges that a crime happened in someone's home, and that the victim still has the right that, well, in New York, it's questionable now, but I do believe that the victim has the right not to let somebody in their home through this process. So just, those are all one-offs. I'm not making that the whole focus at all. I just wanted to bring that up because I know we're trying to do the right stuff here and trying to do good things. I just want that in our thinking.
That was a concern that we had, understanding and working with victims so regularly. And Liza clarified that for us. If you may not have many victims that want to participate directly, but what we could do is appoint a designee that would represent them and share their thoughts and interests and meet with the offender and come and engage in a communication, then provide feedback to this victim. It may not be as effective as direct interaction, but it's something that Liza has expressed that there has been success with. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. I'll just piggyback on that, and thank you, Mr. Biddle, for bringing that up. Certainly, the victim's perspective and the victim's protection are most important. We do know historically a lot of the justice system has not provided victims with the answers that they need, or the closure, or the healing. And so restorative practices are just another option for victims to seek the answers and the healing. And I shared with Glens Falls Police Department that a lot of shaming behaviors not only happen on the offender side, but also the victim side. And so if restorative practices can help the victim and give them another option, I think our caring community would like to see that happen.
This will be something that I could foresee as being a regional effort, not just Warren County, but maybe a tri-county type of an effort. So as we go through, we're going to crawl, then walk, and then hopefully one day run. As we work through this process, you are all members of our community and stakeholders. If you have an interest, a vested interest, and want to participate, we can share with you, and we'd encourage you to join us. Mr. Yusi?
Thank you, Sheriff. Regarding restorative practices, I always term our department as still getting our feet wet, even though we've done it for a few years with our juveniles, because it's so inclusive and there's so much you can do. So our experiences, as we've talked about, have been positive from the juvenile aspect, from, you know, the simple things of how you deal with people, you know, because everybody can do it, how you deal with your staff, how you deal with just probationers coming in without having a formal program. And then in terms of the formal programs we've done, you know, girls circles, working with mediation matters on PINs and JDs, getting the victim involved, letting the victim have a voice is certainly been one of the better things that we've done. You know, and the interesting thing about restorative practices is Liza touched on a little bit, when, you know, after we get our feet wet and after we all have an understanding and we get training, in any system, criminal justice system, it can occur on many levels: at diversion, at the time of plea, disposition, as a condition of probation, the condition of conditional discharge. So we're not stuck on one model. There's options, and I think as we go through this process, we can find what works for us. And I do like the idea of a county-wide, a regional one, and that all takes work. But on the other hand, if we're doing things in a different way, you know, not only is it better for the people involved in the system and everybody wants to say, you know, what's in it for me? How does this make my life easier? And I think as we go through this, I think that all agencies and departments that get involved with it find that there is a direct benefit other than working with victims and defendants. So I'm excited for that, and I look forward to the process. We've worked with Mediation Matters. We have a grant that we were awarded for some juvenile stuff where we have the opportunity to do some training. You know, we put that on the table, and any resources we have to help everybody in terms of what we can do under the parameters of the grant, we certainly will. So we have a lot of things we hope we can offer. And like I said, we're committed from here.
Thank you. Anything more on restorative practices? Yes, Ms. Sieber.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate it. I'm so excited to hear us talk about restorative justice. I know when Liza came on board, we talked a lot about how this was done in Vermont so heavily, but yet in New York, we seem to be catching up. So it's exciting to hear you address this as one of your priorities, Sheriff. Janet Kopash, with the Director of Victim Services with DOCS. I'm pretty sure you've worked with her in the past, or her office. I know certainly Matt has and Marcy has. They have so much experience with restorative justice and mediation. As you start to talk about a regional approach, she might be a great resource to talk to and find out, you know, what has worked in the past with victims and offenders that she's been able to. I know she has multiple certifications, but has for years been able to get ahead of that curve in New York for the entire state. I also think I wanted to call your attention. Supervisor Driscoll had put some comments in the comment bar. I had added a few things, but just for feedback as you go through this process, if there's anything we can help with in terms of making sure those notices go out to whether it be colleges or, you know, an annual list of the civil service exams, whatever, from the procedural standpoint from the county, obviously, you know, we'll help in any way we can. And lastly, I just had a quick question about the victim assistance cards. Are you still required by law to be handing those out? Is that an opportunity maybe to update those and put more information about resources, or are those pretty well not?
Those sheets carry a significant amount of information currently. So to try to add something to that, I think it might take away from that specific card. We were thinking of a card that touched on mental health, domestic violence, veterans, addiction, a full gamut of resources that we could share. And, you know, oftentimes people have several issues they would like to address and communicate with. So this would be more of a pocket resource card that our police officers can just take out and share with victims, witnesses, anyone that's seeking service.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. You mentioned something in the comments. Terry and I are about 8 feet away from the computer screen. So please, if you have a comment, just shout it out. I can barely see you, let alone try to read something in a message. The next point, crisis intervention, having a team and training. And this is an area where we have services somewhat available. And many of the major incidents that you see on the television, they involve people who are in crisis, people who have a mental health event that is occurring. And I mentioned it before, 24/7 police officers are available, and we're the first people that are called, the first to respond. And we're not professionals in mental health services. So we started early conversations, and this is something that Mobile Crisis provides service in Warren County through Northern Rivers. We've contacted their director. She's going to do a brief presentation to our patrol supervisors Monday morning, and we hope to open up and to have more services available. It's a little different at the Warren County Sheriff's Office than it would be in the city of Glens Falls. If you have a service provider in 3 to 4 square miles who lives in the immediate area, if you have something at 2 o'clock in the morning, it wouldn't take them very long to respond. So to have a legitimate program in place, again, much like restorative practices, I think it's going to take some planning, some work, some resources. If we have a mental health event in Hague, it takes our police officers 35 minutes to get there, going with emergency lights and sirens. If we needed to call out somebody for mental health services in the middle of the night, those are the types of things we need to consider and plan for, but they are definitely on our radar. Anybody in this group have suggestions, concerns, anything you want to offer? Mr. York?
I'll just make a comment that I know some counties are looking at a decision tree at the 911 center where certain calls that related to mental health that are deemed to be not an emergency, not a life-threatening mental health emergency, are being diverted directly to their local mobile crisis for first point of contact. Once mobile crisis assesses the situation, then if there's a need for law enforcement, then they bring them in. So I don't know if that's something else we could look at.
Absolutely, and hopefully we would be able to lean in on you a little bit to develop something like that. If you know of other counties who are doing it, through an email or a call later today, we could share some of that information.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I do know that Broome and Schenectady are both doing this.
Thank you.
Mr. York, is addictions included in with mental health? I know a lot of times they go hand in hand. I just think putting those two together would be, one resource would double the amount of response.
The Northern Rivers team is not generally responding to addiction issues, but they certainly are trained to assess for that. But they're not going out like if it was a situation of an overdose. However, if we do implement the Lemur system, individuals with addiction issues or mental health issues, that information would come back to the system, and then we would work with providers like Conifer Park to arrange for outreach efforts. So I think that would be a good way to address those issues.
Yeah, because I think as we're talking, one of the biggest things I started thinking about was the hardest part for anyone to do is to make that first call. But maybe for us to reach out to them, and we have plenty of services now locally with addictions. I mean, there's Conifer Park, which I work for, but then there's Baywood, there's ACCA now. So maybe some kind of a database that we can grab and reach out to. If 3 people called them the next day, think about how they would feel, welcomed, warmed, and really bridge that gap. Even if they don't want treatment, for somebody suffering from addictions, maybe 3 agencies reach out the next day and say, hey, we're here to help, just to let you know, we can help get you here. We can work on a Medicab. We can do lots of different services instead of them waking up the next day going, well, I know I have this card and I probably should call, but I need my next fix. So the first call they're making is to the drug dealer rather than, to an agency.
We also have peer recovery services for both mental health and substance and addiction issues. And so sometimes we would think about involving them in the outreach efforts as well, because sometimes an outreach from somebody who's experienced it and gone through it is effective as well.
Yeah, recovery coaches are awesome for that.
Yeah, and to follow up with what Todd said, we see many people at many times in a small department. You see generations of people, and you never know when it's going to click. So you have to meet people where they're at. And as Todd said, that call may not mean anything. It may mean a lot, but maybe that person's ready, and that's a step. And I think that's great. And having worked in this field for many years and seeing addiction and what it does to people. There's people we've had that you're like, good God, we're going to do drug court now. This isn't going to work. And then it works. And that person's sober for, many years to follow. So I think that's great, Todd.
Yeah. One of the best times to, get when the iron's hot is the day after, when they're feeling down and out and willing to get the help. I can't tell you how many times we've set somebody up for inpatient. The first day they're gung ho, let's go. The second day they're like, I'm feeling better. By the third day, they're like, I don't know if I need that. So, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen that. So, get to them as soon as possible. It really is a timeline game.
Sheriff,
So-
are there any barriers to sharing that information? Are there any confidentiality barriers to sharing that information with the organizations that can help the person that the officer comes in contact with?
Potentially, but I think, like Todd said, I would think the majority of the people who, again, we interact with during crisis, they want help. They want someone to assist them and get them out of the place that they're in. And I think at that moment, I don't know if we'd have just a simple little document that they would acknowledge that they agreed to allow someone to contact them the next morning. That would be a really simple thing for us to do.
That's great.
So the procedure would be that they'd call into the 911, say, and then your department could send them to where they need to go instead of an arrest.
The way I do it is, let's say, for instance, we had patrol officers respond to a domestic dispute. And when we arrive at the home, we identify that there is a component of substance use, somebody that we make an observation, identify as needing services and treatment, addiction related. We could go through the domestic investigation and then subsequent or therewith, have this acknowledgement where we offer these services and say, I think maybe you could use some help. We have resources available. If you don't mind, we will touch base with them and someone will call you later tonight or first thing in the morning, but you need to agree to it. And I think we would have success with that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just for my own knowledge, Sheriff, does dispatch, is that part of the Sheriff's Department or is that part of public safety?
In Warren County, communications is part of the Sheriff's Office.
Great. Thank you.
Yes. And Mary, just to clarify, in those instances, if there was an arrest that was warranted, that type of service or referral would not eliminate or preclude that arrest from happening.
And on another note, Mr. Monahan brought up and Mr. York as well, about hitting people with a call and a lot of love that next day. We all know when it comes to addiction, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But that first day is so important to set a standard of love and caring. And it's something that we, of course, have to do ongoing, days later, because holy cow, and you all know this more than me, when folks are back out on the street, they go back to what they're used to doing. And unfortunately, that doing isn't often the best thing for them. So just the long haul too. I like the short, but I like the long haul as well.
Yes.
My counterpart in Essex County reports that they're having about a 50% engagement success. So that's a really high success rate.
Through a program like this, Mr. York?
Yes, through the lemurs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, Ms. Flores.
Thank you. Defense perspective. I am concerned once an arrest is made, if the Sheriff's Department is doing the contact with the client, the attorney-client privilege could possibly have engaged based on the arraignment. And my position would be I'd prefer the reach out contact to be done by a different agency, not the Sheriff's Department. Because if it's done by the Sheriff's Department, if there's communication with the client, that information could be recorded and it would have to be turned over. So I think there's some attorney-client communication timeframes that occur. And so my suggestion would be have that reach out contact the card, certainly at the time of arrest or at the time of incident. But if there is an arrest, then I'd prefer the contact after that to be made by another agency.
If I understand it correctly, I think that's what Mr. Monahan is suggesting, that we have a treatment provider the following morning make that phone call. Is that correct? Yeah.
And I think, again, it goes back to that warm, fuzzy feeling, and even for us to say, hey, we got your information from the Sheriff's Office, that's in the past now, because we always say, let's move forward and, then set them up. And one of the biggest barriers, obviously, they say is insurance and transportation. But now, we have Zoom, we can work on Medicab. So then we can take all those barriers and really assist the person to getting into treatment, which I'm sure the Sheriff's Office wouldn't want to deal with at that point anyway. But
Okay.
yes, and I got to tell you, just talking about this program, I'm thinking it's a great way for somebody. When you talk about addiction, people, I hear this all the time. I wasn't going to commit suicide, but I didn't care if I woke up. And when we hear that, you know, they do feel down and out. So that warm, fuzzy feeling the next day of getting phone calls, even if it was from 3 different agencies, that's fine with me. And this isn't a competing thing, but I would love 3 different phone calls from somebody to say, hey, we care about you and we want to get you set up and get you the help you need. I mean, there's nothing, and that should be a warm, fuzzy feeling down the road for them to look at the sheriff's office as well, is they didn't just arrest me and left me hanging, that they also put me in a database to help me get the help that I need. And I also think it'll help with probation. If they're already engaged in being on probation, which I already know it bridges the gap, if they go in drug court or any of the systems, if they're already sober, then there's less issues early on in those programs.
And that's a good point. One of the positive aspects of bail reform, and I thought I'd never say there'd be positive aspects of doing such a thing, but I say that kiddingly, is we get a lot of people released under supervision, probably twice as much as we did prior. And with that, we're able to start the process of, because a lot of times the judge will be thinking terms related to mental health or substance abuse and things like that. So we're able to get the ball rolling. And sometimes getting people involved, whether it's through their own initiative or coercion, it's the step to get there. So we've you know, able to get a little bit ahead of the game on that.
Okay. I think the single most resounding point and discussion that we've heard and read through this entire process deals with trust, and having the community trust us, trust in us, is the only way that we will be successful. And to that end, you know, transparency is very important. Accountability, we must hold our members accountable, and we consider, you know, what are the best options for us to be most transparent and to show the community how we operate. It will be an expensive venture, but we are strongly advocating for the purchase of body-worn cameras and the implementation of a program in our sheriff's office. You know, what you say, you can say whatever you want, but what you show people is the true judge of who you are and how you operate. If we, in every official contact with an offender, a witness, a victim, have a recording of the sound and the interaction that's permanently memorialized, there's no better way to demonstrate transparency. I understand that it will be a burden on our taxpayers. And I know, much like so many of these things that we're discussing today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it's something that we are looking at, and we think it would be really crucial for us in this venture.
Sheriff, what are the costs for body cameras?
I wasn't part of the, we did a study not so long ago, and I wasn't a part of the study. I know it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I would think, you know, the equipment itself, the cameras, the hard drives, whether we have them locally on a DVR or cloud storage, it would be several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then on the backside, you know, you would need somebody within our sheriff's office to manage all of that data, to be able to provide it to the district attorney when there's a time of need, to be able to provide it to the county administrator's office when there's a request from the public for this information in these records. So there would be upfront costs, there would be lingering costs, there would be maintenance. It is an expensive venture, but you know, much like we say often, professional law enforcement service is not cheap, and it should not be. Yes, Mr. Biddle?
Sheriff, I am 100% pro camera. It is such a good thing for the police that wear them. It's really good for the folks that they interact with. It really helps on so many fronts, from a safety issue to a resolving issue for both parties. And also what's nice about it is, with the as far as storage issues go, you have the cloud now, that you don't need a huge storage issue on site at your department, nor do you have to maintain that internally. So that, and the costs on that have come down dramatically. So you can keep record and film for a long time. And there's so many good things that happen with that, that if God forbid, one of your crew has to draw a weapon, the camera goes on automatically. If the sirens go on in the car, the camera goes on automatically. There's all kinds of wonderful fail safes, because I can't speak to it, but I'm sure you could, that there's a lot of adrenaline that happens. So do you remember to turn the camera on, don't you? There's a lot of fail safes that happen that take it off the police officers' radar and let them do their job while still maintaining the integrity of the camera. And it is really, really good.
Yes. A little dark. Mr. Bear?
Yes, good morning, Sheriff and everyone. First, I love when Michael Biddle talks technology. I always have a key ear to that, as he struggles to do his Zoom meetings. So, and just, Sheriff, can you comment on just, I know, just by knowing what we know at a very much a novice level, how cameras are used. Can you talk just generally how cameras are used? What's positive? What's a challenge of having cameras?
Well, it would be a learning curve for our agency. First off, you need to get, buy-in from your membership. We would establish a policy where any official interaction with the public, a traffic stop, a call for service, the camera must be on and must be recording. All of the data that comes back from the end of a tour for that officer would be maintained. And we would establish certain timelines and protocols for the maintenance and retention of those records. And, that would be something we would talk with District Attorney Carasone, his staff, we'd review it internally. No need to reinvent the wheel. They're being used and being utilized very successfully across the nation. So for us, it would just be, we would want to retain as much as possible, but also give our members a sense of privacy. If they're in their car and they're driving around and it's not an official function, they would expect to have some private downtime where they can relax. So like Michael said, the cameras now, the technology, if you use a less lethal device like a taser, as soon as that's removed from the holster, the cameras are on. When lights are activated, cameras are on. And he hit it right on the head. So much an officer is processing from the time he receives an emergency call for service, the things that he's thinking of and just trying to get to the scene safely. It could happen where there would be a mistake and they did not activate a camera. And that would, of course, be the instance where there would be something in question regarding that interaction and we wouldn't have documentation. So these fail safes are also vital in our selection of technology.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Glens Falls Police, they have the body cam.
Yes, they
already.
do.
Yes. So I'm 99% sure, attorney, so I'm not going to say 100. But I'm pretty sure they got theirs through a grant.
I'm not sure if they did. We have some.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some grant funding we apply for. It's usually very specific in how we can utilize the funds. Unfortunately, I think 2021, we're not going to see with, working through a pandemic, a lot of grant opportunities, but we do actively and aggressively search for grant funding. Thank you, Mary.
Sheriff?
Yes, Mr. Bill.
Just as a follow-up to Mr. Bear's wise words, number one, I received my information from Sheriff Murphy in Washington County and also my Vice President of IT, my 19-year-old Christian Biddle. On the rare occasion that I can't get on Zoom, it's because Christian's not around. So I just wanted to give credit where credit's due. And yes, Mr. Bear, I'm all thumbs. So thank you for that.
Yes, Mr. Monahan.
I do just want to share one quick story where the cameras helped the officers in Glens Falls. So Ms. Gooden, this is one of those aspects where it helped. We had a person here that was under the influence. We did call the Glens Falls department, and they came over. This guy told the officers to handcuff him, and then decided to take his head and ram it into the ground, creating lots of blood and yelling police brutality. recently I had saw where he was suing some people, and the lawsuit never went through because of the body cam. And I remember the officer telling the gentleman, "Hey, our body cam is on." It actually protected them more than it hurt them. So I get that there's both sides of the story on that, but one of the things is I think it can really help some people from getting into some trouble over people that are troubled. And this guy was troubled and under the influence. He'd been at some concerts. So, good, bad, or indifferent, I definitely think it can help the officers as well.
And I don't know that if it would ever represent a savings, but I think Mr. Buren could state that it may help some of our cases resolve quicker if you have video and audio footage of a criminal act or an interaction with an offender.
Yeah, of course. It just, as long as it's captured. The one limitation to body cameras is that they only capture what they're pointed at, and they only capture the audio that it actually captures. They're not perfect, but they're certainly better than nothing. The cost is high. I certainly don't know the dollars on that. But then there's a spiral effect too of not only the cost to implement the program and making sure you have the right policy in place for the sheriff's department, but also retaining the information, getting it to the DA's office. We then subsequently sending it out to the defense through our discovery obligations, but also having the time and resources to review the body camera, because if a typical interaction can take an hour or two. As those of you in law enforcement know, the arrest is the end result. There's a lot that leads up to the arrest. And if you've got more than one officer on scene, that's more than one body camera and more than one perspective and angle to review. So where the call comes in and that's time-stamped at your call center at 2 in the afternoon, and the call is cleared at 5 in the afternoon, and you've got only one officer present, there's potentially 3 hours of body camera footage. 2 officers, that's potentially 6 hours of body camera footage for just that one incident. And then it just keeps going and going. Many times, thankfully, a call comes out somewhere in the county, and it's not just that particular agency that responds. Glens Falls PD responds, Warren County responds, the state police responds. Sometimes South Glens Falls comes across the bridge. You've now got multiple agencies with multiple body cameras, multiple storage systems, and one discovery obligation on the part of the Warren County District Attorney's Office is to get all of it to the defense, review all of it ahead of time so that we're doing our jobs. It's great technology to have. It just creates with it a huge financial and time commitment for everybody involved. So I hope that sheds some more light on the topic.
Yes, it certainly did. Okay. Through this process, we have identified a number of training needs here in our sheriff's office. And I think, again, the governor's executive order has pushed some of these needs to the forefront. And we are already starting to see the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services responding. So there will be more training opportunities locally that our officers can receive. We've started to identify some, and just to touch on the points: implicit bias, cultural diversity and sensitivity, persons with disabilities, de-escalation. These are courses, some we already have members registered for, train the trainer program, so they can go out, receive training, bring them back and share them with all of our members. We are going to identify one of our lieutenants as our training coordinator for our public safety division. And that person will have the responsibility of actively seeking out training, thinking outside the box, having platoon level trainings where a supervisor will interact with their platoon. We really want to ramp up our training in our sheriff's office. I will say to you, as we have throughout the entire process, Liza has been sharing information with us. It's all been extremely beneficial. But if you learn of something that you think that our sheriff's office may benefit from, please share it with us, especially during this time. If it's a webinar or something that an officer can pull up on a screen and participate in remotely, we're going to have them joining in these trainings. Yes, Ms. Flores.
Thank you. I just wanted to, under this topic of training and transparency, they really go together. In terms of the communication with the Sheriff's Department to the public, it would be nice if the Sheriff's Department on their website would be able to indicate the types of training that they do, how often they do it, so that the community can know what's going on, as opposed to, well, you're doing training and nobody knows what's going on. So in terms of transparency and training, that would be really helpful. One of the topics you didn't mention, and I think is important also, is police officer personal safety and wellness training, because the officers go through a great deal of things all the time, but I also think that type of training would become important. Along those lines also, what does accreditation mean? I know that you all are accredited in terms of your training, but what does that mean to the public? How do they understand that? And putting those issues out on your webpage may be helpful. So I just wanted to bring up those topics with that, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
If I can jump in here, in March, we held, in February of last year, we held a training here that was a statewide training for officer wellness, folks that could come and speak with an officer that are other officers. So it was a peer-to-peer training here. So we sent, I think we had 7 folks go, 7 members here from each division, corrections, patrol, and communications. So we have some peer-to-peer folks that can sit and have a conversation with a dispatch. Another dispatcher can have a conversation with another dispatcher about a bad call. We also have, it just came up this week from DCJS, we also have 3 registered to attend a Zoom week-long training for peer-to-peer or law enforcement wellness. So we do have that in place. That's coming up, I think, in March via Zoom.
The point you mentioned, though, is, we do a lot, we talk about a lot, but the public's not aware. I think utilizing our website and social media to share this with the public will show them the good things that we're doing and how we prepare and, work to best serve them, serve you. Did I see another hand? Yes.
Of course, what a surprise. In terms of also transparency, it would be nice if on the website, if it isn't there already, how someone can go make a complaint if they do want to make a complaint, and maybe some of your policy and procedures that could be made open to the public so that the public understands more what is going on and what procedures are, so that it is more transparent to the public.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to clarify from our last meeting. When I spoke last time about our website, I kind of misspoke a little bit. At that time, there were 2 Warren County Sheriff's Office websites that were actually up and running at the same time. Our older website that has been in place for a number of years, which is now down, and our IT department built a county-wide website, which is very nice. And we're an offshoot. We have a button on that for our sheriff's office. So these types of things we can start adding to the countywide website, but we are still in the process of building one specific to the sheriff's office. It's going to take us a little bit of time. The constraints for COVID definitely are affecting this, but that will be coming.
So will this include different language, like Spanish? Can you get it in a different language?
I didn't even consider that, Ms. Gooden. It's something I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Thank you
think
for
it would be
bringing that
good to
up.
consider.
Yes. The next topic is something that I really didn't know a lot about until the executive order came out. It's a crime prevention effort, crime prevention through environmental design. There is a training program that we intend to send members to, and essentially we touched on this. A business, a residence can deter crime simply by environmental or lighting, camera systems, things of that nature. So we want to develop a countywide program where officers receive training and businesses, residents can reach out. We'll go and we'll perform an assessment of their business, of their home, offer them suggestions, advice, and guidance on how to best protect their home or residence. That we're at the whim of the state and the timing of that training, but it is available. We're watching for it. I touched on recruitment already. So that we definitely, it's a focus of our plan for this executive order. Something that the undersheriff and I have been researching with our administrative staff. Much of what we do is repetition, training, and going over scenarios over and over. And some agencies have virtual training simulators. Officers are immersed into scenarios, domestic violence, traffic stops, and they are performed in a safe setting, and the scenarios will resolve based upon their communications with the system and their level and use of physical force. That is something we are researching now. We are close to making a decision on which system we are going to purchase. And Ms. Gooden, that is something that we are going to purchase utilizing grant funding, so that will be no burden or cost to the taxpayers. Once we have this up and running, we're going to make it available to all of our members to sharpen and hone their skills on engagement, interactions, and use of force. And we're going to also open it up to the public to allow community groups, people to come in and run through some of these scenarios to see the challenges that we face in making split-second decisions during these times of crisis. Any thoughts on that? Okay.
Sheriff, going back just a little bit before I forget, I think we can tie it under recruitment, but the hiring process, can you talk about a little bit when you hire an individual? I know you do physical agility tests and things like that. Are there mental health evaluations and those type of things that go into decision-making?
Yes, we have an extensive background process, an investigation that's conducted with every employee of the sheriff's office, from our civilian staff to the police officers. So it's all civil service. They take an examination, they're ranked on a list based upon their results of that examination. We'll receive the list from civil service. We'll do interviews with eligible candidates, come to a consensus on a selection, have the candidate come in, do more formal interviews with an investigator. They will then be subjected to medical examinations, psychological examination. We talk to neighbors, schools, references, credit reports. It's very in-depth, the process that everyone has to go to based upon the nature of our business to be hired here at the sheriff's office. We strongly encourage everyone to, put their best foot forward and come, but people are not perfect. If somebody has a minor infraction when they were younger, we would encourage them to still take the test, apply. That's not an automatic disqualification from becoming a member of our sheriff's office. Does that answer your question, Mr. UC?
It does. Thank you.
Yes, sir. During our first stakeholder meeting, I think one, maybe two people had made mention of an auxiliary civilian police force, something where they could assist us if there was a time of need and our resources were thin, where they could respond and assist in calls for service. We think about that, and there are a number of liability concerns that we would have. We talk about the training that our members have to have, and there's no way that we could have civilians trained to that level. But what other counties, other municipalities are doing, something very simple, a neighborhood watch program. So we've talked about it, we've reached out, and I think that it's something we could have great success with here in Warren County. And the way that we would propose this is a neighborhood, a person, they would reach out to us, they would register, sign up to become a designee in their neighborhood, with the understanding that they're really an extra set of eyes and ears for our sheriff's office. We don't want anyone to engage an offender. We just want them to report suspicious activity. It gives them a little more ownership in their neighborhoods and their community, and it provides some assistance to us. Again, going right down to engagement, breaking down the barriers, connection with the community. And it is something that I think, if it gets traction, could be very successful in Warren County. Okay. I mentioned the resource cards. Mr. Monahan has already touched a great deal on substance use and addiction. Just wanted to share 2 points that have come forward as a result of this process. The Alliance for Positive Health, which is a harm reduction organization dealing with substance use, they've reached out to us and asked if they could install a kiosk here at the sheriff's office. The kiosk has been installed. We have not had a PSA that's come out yet. We're waiting for them to come up with their PSA and we'll piggyback on theirs. But essentially, if you have someone who is an intravenous drug user and their philosophy is if people are going to use substances, we want them to be healthy and safe. So this kiosk would be a location where they could dispose of used sharps in a safe location as opposed to throwing them on the street and creating risk for the public. So that's installed. That notice will be coming out soon. In one of the recent criminal justice task force meetings, we talked about the struggles that we are facing right now with the pandemic and offering programs to inmates in our correctional facility. Obviously, we're on lockdown. Visitors are not allowed in, program providers are not allowed in. And someone came up with a great suggestion, and I think it will remain beneficial when the pandemic releases. We are working through the process of installing a smart television starting off in one housing unit. And what the plan would be is if Mr. Monahan wants to offer his program today at 7 p.m. for any inmate that has an interest, we could direct that program in virtually into our booking area and then shoot that off into every program room. So there will be no need for Mr. Monahan to come on site. There will be no need for an inmate to come off a housing unit, and they could participate in multiple programs on any given day. So we're going to test it, make sure that it functions well, get it installed in every housing unit, and then open that up to any organization in our community. When I was going through the campaign, I had several reach out and ask, Sheriff, can we come in? We have something that we think an inmate would benefit from. And our response is always going to be yes. And now with this resource and this program, like I said, we can offer programs all day long.
I just want to say, I think that's awesome. Every agency in the area is, right up on technology as far as that's what we do here. We actually do most of our evaluations on Zoom. And so we're not in the same office. We put them in a bigger room with a huge smart TV. And we do the evaluation that way. So they're in the clinic, they know where it is, they sign the releases, and then they go right in the room. So it would be no different for us. We're already used to that.
We just see so many options, parenting classes, mental health services, any number. If someone wants to connect with an inmate and they want to provide a service to them, as long as it's vetted and, there's no concerns, they will be fed in. I didn't hear of Zoom until the pandemic, but I think, this is going to continue and it's going to be, beneficial for all.
I think one positive thing about the pandemic is we think outside of the box. And this is why this hasn't been done before. I had no idea.
Well, I think we're all there now. I mean, it's made things so much easier for us because of transportation. I know it's saving Medicaid for the Medicare money. On the other side of that, for us, Zoom, AA, NA, Al-Anon, all those meetings are online. People don't have to travel. So Glens Falls may only have, 20 meetings a week, but now that you have Zoom, one of the biggest things I challenge all my people to do is to do a meeting in different countries. Now they're all coming back. I did one in Dublin. I did one in London. And so you just think outside the box a little bit, but that also opens up for people to already start getting help at a low time in their life to be able to start picking them up and only help that transition for when they do leave jail. And I want to piggyback on that. And I know, Mr. LaFar, you and I have talked a couple times on what clients have told me on the jail. I've heard a lot more positive comments. I know that not a lot of people are in jail, but it's been a better transition and they feel more cared for, not just a number and being thrown out. So
well, thank you.
And to follow up a little bit on that, I think what we started as a community through Rob York's agency and different law enforcement is the able program and the reintegration of individuals back in the community. Our local jails, are the biggest detainees in the country. And we talk about reintegration and, on a state level, but on a local level, people coming out of your local jails is one of your biggest providers of people coming back into the community. And I think we've started the process, and I think as we go forward, it's not limited to the sheriff's department. I think it involves all of us to set people up as they come back with different type of services and assistance. And, I think through this process, we'll become better at that.
Definitely.
And to capitalize on that, Mr. Buren's in here. So I think if we offer all these resources, and then when it comes down to the court system, it's awful hard to say that you didn't have the opportunity to engage in getting healthy. I think it also helps make their decisions a little easier when it comes to drug courts and some other programs that are out there. If they've had the opportunity to already start some of this in the jail and get those programs going, I think it helps the process all the way through that.
Certainly. I mean, we factor in a million factors when we come up with ways to try to resolve a case short of a trial. And one of the things that oftentimes we say to ourselves internally when we're discussing cases among ourselves in the DA's office is, what sort of self-help measures has this person taken to try to address the reasons why we're talking about this person right now? So, any resources that are out there that are provided to the person, any opportunities that are provided to the defendant that are taken advantage of or declined, we certainly take that into consideration and factor that in. I'm sure Marcy can echo those comments about self-help measures and how that plays a role in resolving cases short of a trial.
And piggybacking on that, Marcy, how easy would it be for someone to get into drug court? If they're shouldn't I, if they're already in the program and doing well?
One of the things in my office is that we try to be a holistic office. We try to deal with the whole person. We try to refer them to services because we know that will help them deal with the issues that they have. So certainly this is all positive for us, and getting the services, the necessary services to those clients is very important.
It really sounds as though this entire group, we are all on the same page, and it's really nice to hear. We have a draft plan. We've been working on it for some time, and we will release it to the stakeholders Friday for review before it goes out to the public. Everything that we've touched on, the topics that we've touched on, they're all addressed in our plan. They're outlined and described, as well as a number of other points. Are there any topics that we did not? Yes, Marcy?
Of course. I sit on Chief Defenders Association of New York, and I sit on the New York State Defenders Association. So I'm dealing with this issue on multiple levels. And one topic that we have not discussed, and it's been coming up, and I want to just bring it out there, is a civilian review board, where civilians review police misconduct or police use of force issues. I know to my knowledge, there isn't one here, but I just wanted to put it out there that topic is definitely coming up throughout the state. And I just wanted to put it out there. It may be a topic for the future, not for this report, because obviously this report is going to be a living document. And things will continue to evolve. As we've talked about, this meeting system is going to continue at appropriate times. So I just wanted to put it out there that that's something that we haven't discussed, but I am seeing it on a statewide level coming up, and I thought it would be important just to bring it up.
Well, thank you. You were actually, we've been doing this for months, and you're the first person that we've had mention that. So it's definitely something we will talk about and consider. Any other points?
So is there a board of public safety?
There's a board of public safety for the city of Glens Falls Police Department. There is not a board of public safety for the Warren County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. So who is next?
I'm sorry?
So over you is who?
Well, as law enforcement, there's no one over the sheriff in the Warren County Sheriff's Office. I am a co-employer with the county.
You're what now?
A co-employer with Warren County.
Okay. I didn't hear you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, if Mr. Lehman can hear us, at this point, we can open it up if there are any comments or discussion from the public.
Yes, sir. There are a lot of comments from the public.
Okay,
We will start with a person going under the name of local resident. This is starting at the top. So obviously this is the beginning of the meeting. So this is going back to almost 10 a.m. But we are learning that surprisingly large numbers of law enforcement and our military, active and retired, took part in the deadly and lawless behavior at our nation's capital. From the numbers involved, it should draw attention everywhere. Were members of our law enforcement community involved in the Capitol insurgency? ?
we saw something that came up as a comment on social media. There were no members of the Warren County Sheriff's Office that were participating or present at anything in DC during that time.
Here's a comment from a Paul Hancock. I know you haven't written the final report yet, but could someone outline the principal reforms the committee is considering and please relate them to Cuomo's Reinvention initiative?
Definitely. The draft, the way the plan is written, ultimately it's the Board of Supervisors plan to adopt and resolve. But the draft definitely touches on all of the points that the governor would expect a police agency to touch upon.
Here's a question from local resident. What steps are we taking to assure that we are not hiring or retaining individuals who support or engage in lawless behavior? Are we providing training to counter the threat of white nationalism?
Mr. Yusi touched on that during the meeting. We have an extensive background process. So through that, there is a criminal history check. And we have several policies that relate to codes of conduct, standards of professional conduct. If any one of our members engages in an unlawful activity or even an immoral event, whether it's on duty or off duty, we respond accordingly.
Here's another comment from local resident. LEMHRS is an invaluable tool. Please implement a system like this. Opioid abuse must be treated as a mental health issue, not a criminal one. Do not allow officer discretion in the use of LEMHRS. It often results in disparate impact. Offer the program to all citizens, regardless of how an individual officer might feel towards them.
That is something that Mr. York touched upon, and we absolutely see great value in it. I don't see any reason, unless it's not permissible, which I don't think it would be, we are going to implement that program working with Mr. York.
Then Paul Hancock commented on local residents' comment. Yes, in many cases, it seems law enforcement shouldn't be the initial contact. Health professionals should be directed to the scene by 911. Local resident responded, yes, Paul, that is exactly correct. Local resident, could you please have that information made publicly available? Then local resident commented, hire minority officers now.
I'm going to answer that in reverse. Ms. Gooden brought up great points, and I think we had really healthy dialogue regarding minority hiring and our initiatives that we plan to do to improve upon our hiring and recruitment practices. You know, I said it before, I'll continue to say it. Our sheriff's office, we just simply don't say no. If a resident calls and they have a flooded basement, they have a bat in their attic, there's a loose dog in their neighborhood, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, weekdays, all weekend long, we are the number that they call. And if there isn't another immediate service that we can refer them to, we do our very best to help them and provide them with that service. Mr. York touched on a potential referral system that we could establish. It's working in other counties. We will take a look at that. If there is the ability to refer someone to a mental health provider in lieu of or prior to a response from law enforcement, we will do that. We just want to make sure that people are provided the assistance and service that they deserve.
From local resident, make sure your exams do not result in disparate impacts regarding racial composition. From Paul Hancock, a question. Have members of the Stakeholders Committee read the Breathe Act from the Movement for Black Lives?
Mr. Lehman, could you, what act?
The Breathe, B-R-E-A-T-H-E Act from the Movement for Black Lives.
I believe the Breathe Act also went hand in hand with the 8 Can't Wait initiative. And that is something that we reviewed in-house. I don't know if the stakeholders have. It's something that we addressed, and we made some revisions to our use of physical force policy. And we are compliant with all 8 of those criteria.
Here's a question from a Gloria Bennett. Reiterating a prior question, we know that white nationalist organizations are infiltrating police departments. How will Warren County investigate the presence of white supremacists in its force and recruits?
It's really a touchy subject to address somebody's preferences relating to practices, be that religion or organizations. If there are organizations that are against government, against law enforcement, we have policies in place that prohibit that. We are a decent sized agency, but we're small enough to know all of our people. If we had an instance where we had someone that we should be concerned about, we would know about it very early, and again, we would address it. That just goes right back to, we just hope that the public trusts that we're doing the right things, doing the best for you, and providing you with the best officers and the best service. We can say it all day long, but we really hope that we show it and you feel it.
Local resident then, and apparently responding to Ms. Bennett's question, said, please respond to the above question during this meeting. This is a major concern for local residents. Local resident then commented, I appreciate the focus of helping victims, but worry that narrowing our focus too much will result in a purely punitive theory of criminal justice. Christine Nichols wrote, please respond as to officers involved in January 6th. Trust must be rebuilt in our community. Gloria Bennett wrote, yes, restorative justice cannot be punitive, but it does demand accountability. I am concerned that the initial application will be with officers, which seems to remove accountability, not ensure it. Local resident, an on-call mental health professional should be available to be dispatched with responding officers. As a community member, I fully support that idea of Mr. York. Gloria Bennett, I think many in the community support the development and implementation of an LEAD program. Local resident, while I am in general support of programs like LEAD, the use of discretion by police officers as to who should be offered services is a potential problem. Gloria Bennett, I agree with that. There should be procedures in place to mitigate the impact of officer bias shared publicly. Local resident, absolutely, and perhaps most important for all of these issues is the establishment of a civilian oversight board to ensure full transparency. Gloria Bennett, yes. To meeting participants, are there any plans in place to create a civilian oversight board for these reform processes or for procedural review?
Mr. Lehman, you touched on a lot, and I think most of what you addressed, we shared and discussed at length. LEAD is something that I know Glens Falls is interested in, and I mentioned it in our first stakeholder meeting that I too would have concerns if you allowed an officer to have the discretion as to which offender would be referred and which offender would not. I think that we will collectively develop a restorative practice program that maybe incorporates LEAD and other services, and we will just be a collaborative partner in that program, not out at the forefront.
Okay, Paul Hancock wrote that he agrees with Marcy, and there was no elaboration as to which part, but it's always easy to agree with Marcy, though.
I always agree with Marcy.
Yes, exactly. Local resident, add in a civilian oversight board, and our community can begin having a sheriff's office that we can be proud of. Linda Nichols, do we conduct no-knock services and under what circumstances? It seems unwise.
I cannot remember the last time we executed a no-knock search warrant. It's something that occurs very, very rarely, and we do so in conjunction with our district attorney's office.
Local resident, the cost for body cameras will be offset in no time given the amount they will aid in future litigation. Paul Hancock, but if I'm not repeating myself, I'm looking for real non-reformist reform of policing practices. The NYCLU has called for less punitive and more supportive services. Our law enforcement representatives have responded, we don't have the resources.
It
Local resident.
I'm hearing a couple names come back quite frequently. Mr. Hancock, Ms. Nicholson. I'm just going to state that throughout this entire process, like I said at the open, there's not been a person or an organization that I've turned away that wants to share their thoughts and feelings. If any of you would like to contact me to set up a meeting, a phone call, my phone number here at the Sheriff's Office, 518-743-2518. Please give me a call and we can have conversations about all of this. We can address it in person, collectively with a group. I've met with coalitions. You know, it's really difficult and challenging to try to address some of this stuff in this setting, and we want to make sure that these points are addressed.
Local resident, these types of stories are great to get officer buy-in for the program, and if officers are more concerned about their activities being recorded than others' activities, then we should be concerned. I have very little sympathy for the complaint that you have to spend too much time watching a video. Move on. Paul Hancock, then reallocate the resources away from law enforcement. An MRAP cost $675,000 plus. It was free, but the tires alone cost $13,000. Gloria Bennett, agreed, Paul. Community support services should not be used as post-arrest referral, but an initial response, sans police, or as a lead response. I think body cams are not an answer, but are a step. Local resident, Matt Buren, do you employ interns in your office to offset those types of tasks? Gloria Bennett, then it seems like there is a redundancy. If there are too many police showing up from different departments, get rid of one of the departments and reallocate their funding. Paul Hancock, Sheriff LaFar has deferred that decision to Glens Falls and currently they're not interested. They need to cut budgets. The need to cut budgets may bring that about. Kay Baker, I would like to hear something about the potential for a civilian oversight committee. Did you cover that, or do you want me just to move on?
That was just something, the first person to address it, and now it has come to light. That's something we will take a look at.
Paul Hancock agreed. Yes, talk about a civilian oversight board. Local resident, it should absolutely include other languages. Are we really going back to broken window policing? Because you know that doesn't work and results in disparate impacts for lower socioeconomic classes. Paul Hancock, yes, traffic stops of non-white residents are a gateway drug into poor communities. Gloria Bennett, whoa, whoa, whoa. Neighborhood watch programs are incredibly dangerous and have led to the deaths of so many disabled Black and brown people. Local resident, agreed, Gloria. Neighborhood watch is great in theory and almost universally racist in implementation. Gloria Bennett, neighborhood watch is what happened to Trayvon Martin. Local resident, especially so in a community that tends to be so racially homogenous. Gloria Bennett, exactly. Nope, vehemently oppose neighborhood watch, which are always used to terrorize communities of color, disabled people, and poor people. Jill Diamond commented, what a wonderful idea, the smart TV program for inmates. Christine Nichols asks, why was Zoom meeting not opened up to the community like last time? This should be done with community, not to it. Paul Hancock wrote, we need fewer armed officers or neighborhood watch agents in so many areas. Schools, social services agencies, outside courts where migrants are seeking justice. Let's see. The public, local resident, the public are stakeholders. Paul Hancock, that was number 3 on Cuomo's initiative, community engagement prior to writing a report. We have some more thank yous to Marcy from local resident and Christine Nichols. We share your concerns, Mary, wrote local resident. The citizenry is above the sheriff, and as such, we need oversight. Local resident, I appreciate the committee addressing issues raised by myself and other community members. Gloria Bennett, white nationalism is not a preference. It is terrorism, and the entire point of the reform is to address systemic racism in the community. That is a totally inappropriate and inadequate response. Local resident, agreed, Gloria. The answer started out right, but then seemed to softball the issue of white nationalism. Christine Nichols asked, why was Zoom meeting not open up to the community as it was last time? We must be involved in this process. Do you want to answer that one? Or?
Yes, the initial stakeholder meeting was open up to the stakeholders, and I believe it was fed via YouTube just in the same fashion as this. I failed to mention at the start of this meeting, and I did at the last, that Warren County has more than 66,000 stakeholders. And I will continue to invite anyone who wants to contact us to have a conversation, private, public. You know, we have nothing to hide. It's really refreshing that there are so many strong personalities and opinions that are out there, and very diverse. And all that we can say, all that I can say is, I'm an elected official. The people in Warren County chose me to serve as your sheriff, and I'm doing my very best. We work as a team, collaborate with other agencies and other partners to make the best decisions. And people are not always going to be favored. They're not going to be favorable, and they may not agree, and that's okay. But if you come to learn after a couple of years that I did not provide you with the service that you would hope for, there's going to be another election. You know, we do our very best. It's sincere. Much of the comments that people have shared, we agree with. We're not saying anyone is wrong or we disagree. We're working through this. This is a process, and our process is going to continue.
And the last comment is from local resident. As to my last comment, I would ask that in any future meetings, comments be addressed as they are made rather than grouped at the end so that members cannot pick or choose which issues to address.
Okay.
And that's it for the comments at this point.
Thank you. Our implementation timeline. Today is a stakeholder meeting. By April 1st, we have to have this plan adopted by our Board of Supervisors. Their board meeting, the final board meeting before that adoption date deadline, is March 19th. So we're really on a time crunch. We will not have another official stakeholders meeting. Many of you that I'm looking at right now, we've been meeting individually. I invite any of you that wish to do so. We'll continue those efforts and we'll work to collaborate. Like I said, we intend to release our draft plan to the stakeholders and to the supervisors this Friday. It's going to, I'll present again publicly, have discussion at our Public Safety Committee meeting on February 22nd, and it should be released to the public on that same date. There will be a time for public comments, and the adoption should be at the meeting on March 19th by our Board of Supervisors. I will say, finally, before we close, do not be concerned about the April 1st deadline. You know, we're going to continue to work through these processes. If we put out a plan that we learn needs to be revised or addressed, we'll address it. You know, we all do this. We're all professionals. We'll continue to work together and provide the best service to our community.
Don, could you do me a favor? Just, there was one question that was specifically addressed to me. I wanted to answer it, but then I didn't want to interrupt somebody else. I think it was Sheriff LaFar who was answering one of the other several questions at the time.
It was about interns. Do you employ interns? I'll see if I can find it. It was about interns watching the video, essentially. I think it was response to your comment about having to watch all the video from the body cams. Right. Yes, Matt Beeran, do you employ interns in your office to offset those types of tasks?
First of all, I'm not the district attorney. That's Jason Carasone. He unfortunately had a bunch of other professional commitments today that he had to attend to. So he asked me to appear for him on this. No, we don't employ any interns. And all the attorneys in the office are the ones who watch the body worn cameras currently. And that, that's the right thing to do. It really requires a good amount of legal analysis to watch those videos and to understand the importance of what's there and what's not there, and then compare them to what's also written in other documentation, other paperwork, any radio transmissions, any sort of recorded phone calls might be going into the 911 call center, or any other communications. So no, it's the attorneys in the office who review the body camera footage.
Okay, that's all that we have for you. If there's anything else you have to offer, we're here. And if not, we would just like to say a sincere thank you to all of you for joining us and participating in this process with us.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really been
Thank you.
informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. I gotta tell you, this meeting is awesome. There's a lot of good people, a lot of good ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Monahan. Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.